All right, YouTube, this is Mr. Mean coming at you this wonderful Tuesday morning, January 11th, 2022. We're already in the new year. This is being recorded and it'll go up later on today. On the line with me via Discord, the awesome goatee man himself, Wiki Snapper, a.k.a. The Dave. Dave, tell us who and what you are.
I'm Dave.
I'm Dave. Monotone,
Yeah, that's about right there, exactly. I'm Dave. I'm on it. It works.
And what do you make, Dave? Why are you on this silly channel with me?
So at the moment, I made this. It is the Trade Winds book for low fantasy gaming. It is an item compendium, and it has services and a bunch of other stuff in there. I am also, I make a bunch of other games, and I'm working on making a bunch of other games. I haven't actually produced other games yet.
You're working on it, though.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how good does it feel to physically hold a copy of that book in your hands?
Oh man, it's about the most awesome thing ever. It really is. It's like taking something and you're so my brother I sat down with the LFG game and we were playing 5th edition for like 3 years, and I was totally done with 5th edition in my own head, but nobody else really was yet. I mean, I think that's how that works for just about every gaming group, where the game master is pretty much so just burnt out on the system, and then all the players are still wanting to continue playing on their characters.
Well, yeah, because the players are demigods. I mean,
and that doesn't help with that whole situation.
No.
So I started with this low fantasy gaming, I stumbled across it online, and I sit down with it and I bring it out and I put it on the table. I'm like, I really want to play this one. I like the feel of this system. And my brother opens it up and we're going to play, and he looks over at the equipment section of this book and he's like, I can't do this. There's no way for me to go shopping or anything. I mean, there's like nothing in the book. It's a great system. The equipment section is put on 3 pages.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, I can work with that. So I start making an equipment. I start with just this list of equipment, and it's the list is starting to get longer, and then I start putting things in there that are historical things that other people probably don't know what they are. So I start coming up with little definitions in there, and before I know it, I'm like, man, if I got a definition for this one, I need to put a definition for this other thing in there, and then I've got definitions for all of these items starting up, and I'm like, oh man, I'm most of the way to having a book. So I start doing artwork for it, and then I learn how to use this program to put it all into a book format. And I'm like, man, that's only like 70 pages. That's not enough for a book. So I start adding other things to it, because I am the master of feature creep. Just I could add a little bit more in there and a little bit more. And then at a certain point, you're just like, holy crap, you need to step away from this or it's never going to be done. So.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I have a PDF copy. I believe you were kind and generous enough to send me a copy, but I also bought a copy, and I think I bought the copy before you sent me the preview copy, before you had actually got it, I think 100% complete. And then when it hit the drive-through RPG store, because I get notified of certain things, and so that was one of the things I wanted to be notified of. So, and I can say I love it. It is my go-to resource book for merchants, for equipment of all kinds. I love what you did with the monetary system, because you put your own spin on it in a realistic way. But then you're like, well, if you like to use gold, silver, copper, and platinum, here you go. Here's a conversion. Do it, knock yourself out. But this is what we're using in the book, and it works really well.
I personally hate how overinflated gold is in every game system I've ever played, and it's just like, if gold was that prevalent, we would be buying things with lead.
Right.
because then that would be lead isn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. How many dragon hordes are there in the world, And, parties all across the world seem to find a dragon horde eventually somewhere around 10th level, in D&D. And then now they're insanely rich. How can the world's coffers still be full? Like you said, if there's that much gold in the world, we should be buying stuff with air, because...
Well, the copper pieces are always more rare than the gold pieces.
Right.
So
Well, that's because nobody wants copper. Can you imagine your party's face? You found 10,000 copper pieces. We're rich. Wait, you said copper. Yeah, copper pieces. Well, that sucks.
But here's the best part of that. You found 10,000 copper pieces. Now figure out how to get them out of the dungeon.
Exactly. Little anecdote story. We're playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Green Ronin Edition. And I'm the GM, and I've got about 8 players, so it's a big game. And so they go into this abandoned dwarven hold that's been taken over by goblins or orcs. They clear out the orcs and everything. Like I said, there's a party of 8, so they're damn near a squad of troopers, and they're all pretty tough. And so they go in, and there's untold rumors of riches beyond mortal ken in this dungeon, and nobody's been able to find it for hundreds of years, and everybody's gone in and explored it. So they get in a fight with one of the dwarven defenders. It's a golem basically, and they fight the golem. Well, the golem swings and he critically misses. So I said, okay, well, he hits the wall, the cavern wall, and he knocks away some stone. And while they're fighting, I had one of the players make a perception check or notice check, whatever it's called in Warhammer. I don't remember now. And I'm like, you see something glinting? And he's like, oh. And it's right by a furnace that's still going for some reason, magical furnace. And so he's like, oh. So after the battle's done, they defeat the golem. They've mostly driven the orcs back, and so they've got a little area. So they start digging away at the wall, and they find that the dwarves were so greedy and so paranoid of their gold that they put it in the walls.
Well, that's a good place for it,
right? And so it just. And they had been searching this place for a while, trying to find the gold. They're like, oh, it's got to be deeper, and they kept going deeper, and of course they run into bigger and badder things, because that's how dungeons work in Warhammer. Yeah. And so they get into this big battle with a golem, manage to defeat it, and of course he hits the wall, and they find out, oh, they've stored the gold in these little cubby holes that are hidden, and of course it's dwarven technology and everything, so it's really well hidden. And there was a dwarf in the party, but he was raised by human kind of dwarf, so he wasn't dwarfy enough. Yeah.
The history there, that lifetime of growing up around stone.
Right. And so they managed to find a cache of this dwarven gold and everything, and jewels and gems. And so they load up all their packs they are beyond wealthy. They are so rich, it's not even funny. They are, we do some downtime and we rest, and they load up the pack mules, and they've got to cross the River Reich. They've got a wagon full of gold. Right, they are rich. All they got to do is get back to a settlement.
It would be so great. You get all the gold out of that place, and you go across the river, and your wagon gets washed away.
Well,
I love it.
Pretty much. First of all, Karl Franz the Fourth or whatever is coming across with his army, and they're commandeering wagons and stuff for the the army, and so they see a wagon, so the general sends out some people, and says, we're taking this wagon, and they're like, we'll compensate you for it, and they're like, no, you're not taking our wagon, so it's some tense negotiations, and they managed to parlay and make some social roles. They had a noble in their group, so they were able to. I mean, I had them teetering on the edge of crying. They were so worried that because they're going to take the wagon, and the army's thinking, oh, it's just a wagon. We'll give them 20 gold pieces. There's billions of dollars worth of gold inside this wagon, right? And so they don't want to give up the wagon, and they don't want the army to find out, because that would just go to fund the war fuel, right? So they didn't want to get it compensated. So they finally they by the skin of their teeth, they get out of that situation. They're like, great. So they decide, well, we'll go further down the river and we'll ford where there's a crossing. So they get on it. I roll some random events, and there's a storm. And if sure enough, they're going across the River Reich, and the wagon is so heavy, right? And the barge master is like, the barge master's a dwarf, of course, and he's like, you can't be taking it, it's too heavy, and they're like, no, we've got to get across. All right, we'll not be responsible. And so sure enough, the barge sinks. So everybody put all their gold on the wagon except for my one player. He kept his in his saddlebags with his horse. Well, horses can swim, and they're actually very good swimmers.
Yeah.
So he gets across the Reich with most of his gold, and he's the only one left. Now, still, he's got enough gold to set the party up pretty well. But just to add insult to injury, months of still play. We played this campaign for like over 2 years. So I waited like 6 months, and then I'm like, the newspaper, the town crier, they're in Minheim, and they're like, there's a town crier that's because they have a newspaper, and he's like, gold is struck on the Reich, fishermen are finding gold. He's the crier, and there's a new gold boot, and they're all like, every one of the players looks at me and like, you are a fucking dick. That's our gold.
That's so good.
Yeah, so that's my little anecdote, my little story about giving the players unlimited wealth and then taking it all away.
That's wonderful. My players probably wouldn't play anymore if I did that. They would just be like, "We disown you," and they'd push me away.
Yeah, nah. But you know what? You treat the worse you treat the players, the more they keep coming back.
I don't know about that.
So
I play the moment I sleep. I don't know that I'm up for that.
So have you got a chance to talk to Steve over at Low Fantasy Gaming or Pickpocket Press?
I talk to him on the occasion. I don't try to bug him too often because I figure he's pretty busy.
Yeah, he has a full-time job, and then of course he runs Pickpocket Press, which is an amazing company. If any of the meanies haven't seen it yet, which I'm sure most of them have, but if you're new to the channel, go check out Pickpocket Press. They're an amazing company. If you like your what do you call it? It's not OSR. It's not 5th edition.
I would say if you like a modern system that has the grittiness of an OSR.
Yeah.
Or like the grittiness is more old school. When I frequently get asked what the feel between, like what the difference between Low Fantasy Gaming and 5th edition is, and the best way I can describe it is it's the difference between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Whereas in Diablo 2, like the game there's a challenge to the game. It's a little, you don't know what's going to happen. It feels like a darker, grittier game. And then you go to play Diablo 3, and it's like we're all gods here, just throwing spells around constantly, and yeah. And it's like that's the big difference. It's like the fear of anything in Diablo 3 is gone, just like in 5th edition. There's no fear of anything.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be connected to a character, in my opinion, my experience, if the character can. If there is no risk. Right.
Well, you're preaching to the choir because, I have a number of 5th edition books in the library there. And it's a good game. Don't get me wrong. If you want to play superheroes and fantasy, it's a great game.
It's a strong system. It's got great mechanics by and large, but it's just too. I don't know. It's too buttercup. It's got too much pandering for me for just the ease of everything. And I like a darker game. I like a grittier world.
Right. Yeah.
Some movies want to start you off with this heroic bird flying through the air, and you know that whatever's going to happen at the end of this movie, it's going to be a great movie. I am more the type to start you off with like the boot that just jumps off the cart and lands into a thing of cow poop, and it's like, this is how your story begins.
Yes.
You're not the hero of this story. You're just trying to make it through.
Yeah. DCC does that. You're not a hero. You're just what we got. Good luck. I hope you survive. And I'm a huge fan of DCC. So when I found Low Fantasy Gaming, and I'm going to agree with your brother, I saw the equipment section and I went, what? There's, I started flipping pages like there's got to be more in the back. Yeah, there's more tables on how to spawn demons than there is equipment. What's going on with this?
it's appropriate to low fantasy gaming in a lot of ways. That is
Yes.
really what the game is. The game is very much engineered for your game master to have an easier time telling a story than it is for the players.
Right.
And there needs to be a mix in there, but at the same time, if your game master can tell a great story, then the players are going to have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and
that makes-
I think mechanics are just that. They're mechanics, and I think the game master and the player make the story. And the rules are just there, obviously, to help facilitate and make everything easy. I have since given up 5th edition. I don't really play it anymore. I definitely don't GM it. I love the Midgard setting from Kobold Press. It's a phenomenal setting. I keep bugging Mr. Bauer to convert it over to Pathfinder 2nd edition, because they did convert it to Pathfinder 1st edition, but then they don't even support that anymore. But they're on the 5th edition bandwagon and they're making money, so I can't blame them. But and that's when I found Low Fantasy Gaming, and I went, yes, this is the game.
Oh yeah. So I won't lie. I have been eyeballing my book, deciding do I want to make this a 5th edition book for the buttloads of money that would probably rake in, or am I gonna hold true to my values?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Mr. Mean Speaks started as a gaming review channel, and just me. I was unemployed at the time down in Louisiana, and I was going stir crazy, and I needed something to do. And so I started this channel, and I have quite the library back there, and I said, well, I've got all these games I want to, and I don't see any videos on them. Nobody's talking about these other, like The Dark Eye or Low Fantasy Gaming. There's tons of videos on D&D and Mutants and Masterminds, and quite a few on Pathfinder, and a couple on, Dungeon World, but that's really about it. You don't see, any reviews on, Fading Suns or, any of these other games out there. So that's how the channel started, and then of course it grew from there. And there's so many better games than D&D, and I'm not saying D&D is a bad game. It's not. It's a good game. Like I said, if you want to play superheroes in a fantasy setting, it's perfect. There's a reason you don't see any level 15 and above streams of D&D, because the game mechanics totally break down. It's up.
After running the game for I had the same campaign going for 3 years, and especially if you use the experience as written in the book, the players level up into those higher levels super quick.
Yep.
And I sat down to play 5th edition when I did as kind of a understanding of I wanted to see how Wizards of the Coast wrote their games.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure. I mean, I've been working on my own stuff for a long time. I kind of, I could whip up a game system in an afternoon. It's never, not polished enough to sell or anything, but you come up with enough to play something. So I wanted to see how they did it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to run this campaign rules as written, and we're just going to go through the way the campaign's supposed to be. Of course, I say rules as written. There's some things in there that I'll never listen to. Like, I'm going to have goblins be, somewhat relatable right before they stab you in the back. So that way there's some pity and sympathy, and then you don't want to kill them, and then all of a sudden it's bad.
Yeah. And, that's my problem with it is, go in the dungeon, kill the monsters, take their loot. Why are there a ton of monsters in this dungeon? What's controlling them? They never go into any of that,
My first dungeon master, when I first sat down, I was like, I'm going to run a game. She was like, her thing was, her only advice really was, make your world an ecosystem. If it makes sense in the world, the players are going to, your players are just going to follow in with it.
Yeah.
And so if those goblins are living in that ruin because it's keeping the rain off their head, then that makes sense.
Right.
But if those goblins are living in the ruin because they want to, stab adventurers that come in for no reason, then that just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. Why are and I think the adventures so far, I don't know if you've looked at Low Fantasy Gaming's The Adventure Frameworks.
I have the first one, and there's some adventures in there that look like a lot of fun, and I haven't actually run any of them, but I've read through them.
A lot of them, they make really a lot of good sense coming from the world that Steve has created for Low Fantasy Gaming. So I
like about it.
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah. I highly recommend picking up Adventure Framework 2. And then I would say along your own line, because of the way it seems that, from reading your equipment guide and the way it kind of flows and the format, the Kobold Press's Warlock Grimoires. I don't know if you've seen those or not. They're 5th edition, but they're generic enough you can adapt them to anything.
Give me 2 seconds. I need to write that down.
Yeah. Kobold Press Warlock Grimoire. And I have the first 2. The third one and what it is basically is Kobold Press runs a Patreon. And so if you subscribe to their Patreon every month or however their frequency is, you get an article, and it could be 2 pages, could be 10 pages. And it's usually adventures, races, magical items, motivation, whatever. And then what they do is every year they condense it all and put it in a little book, a little hardback digest-sized book. I actually have a review on the channel of it. But they're generic enough that you can put them. I mean, of course, it comes with 5th edition stats, but the premise of the adventures and stuff you can run in any game,
That's actually one of my biggest issues with 5th edition is the way they write their stat block up.
Yeah.
You got to hunt for the monster's hit chance and damage on every one of the blocks.
Yeah.
They don't put that stuff where it's super quick and easy for the game master.
Right.
They hide it every time in a
it's hide and seek. I used to go through. I would print because everybody's got pirated copies, so I would print the page of the monster manual that I needed, right, and then I would I'd print that page off, and then I would highlight the info I needed.
I write in books. I'm totally okay with writing in a book, and I will just write the damage that I want it to. Like, even if sometimes I'm like, this thing doesn't do I'll write the damage I want it to do right in the book. I'm like, fuck it, this is my copy. I paid $50 for that page.
Right. I'm going to do what I want with it. Yeah, totally get it. All right, well, so we've got the inspiration behind the equipment guide. There's a lot of, especially on my Discord, there's a lot of budding writers or designers. What was the process of working with DriveThru? Was it painless?
Actually it was a lot smoother than I expected. The hardest part is, from my perspective, was that I tried to get the first books to come out right when all of the paper shortages started happening.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of different steps in there where with like a lot of the steps where it should have been really quick were taking a long time. Now I'm gifted with some level of foresight because I'm also a woodworker, and I was like, you mean lumber prices? Was it last year or the year before? Then were through the roof, and I was like, oh man, this is going to hit paper, and it's going to hit paper hard.
And it did.
So I gave myself like 6 months to get it through the printing process, fortunately.
Yeah.
And I don't think everybody else I don't think the rest of the world was even thinking about that like that. And, maybe I should play in the stocks, but I just feel like that's cheating in life. I don't know.
No, I mean, you nailed it right on. I mean, and I will order the hard copy because it needs to go next to all of my LFG books. Those ones right there, a lot of those are the LFG books, just because I didn't have room on my shelf.
To match enough, but I went with white text up here because when it was orange, you couldn't read it at all.
Right, and I like that.
It's pretty similar. It's not exactly the same because I didn't want to infringe on Steve's to do, but I wanted it to look nice to the other book next to the other books.
And it will because their books. I mean, I love the pickpocket logo, and I like that logo too. So yeah, definitely, it's on my list to order. I've got it in my basket at DriveThru to order. I'm just waiting for the prices to drop because it's just insane right now.
That was the other thing. It's like I had all of this stuff. I've been setting the whole thing up, and then just before I went to start selling, they're like, "Hey, we're going to make our premium books ridiculous price."
Right? Yeah, $70 for a 200-page book, and black and white, and you're like, what? No. So.
Yeah, I just decided, I used the pricing that Steve used for his companion guide, where before the price hike, where it was $50 for it, and that's kind of where I went with it. I'm like, well, I can't with good conscience charge people more than that for that, no matter what the printing cost is.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's starting to calm down a little bit. I haven't looked at it too in depth, but I have noticed that the prices seem to be a little more reasonable lately. Now I don't know how true that is. I did look at one book. It was 37 pages softbound, and they wanted like $30 for it for premium. And I was like, well, no, I'm not. It's just $1 a page. I'm not paying. No, So I've just, it's in my bin, and I'm waiting on it. But so aside from all that, so the process of dealing with drive-through sounds like it was pretty painless.
It was I would say relatively painless. The waiting. There was one of the when I ordered the proofs or the second set of proofs in the premium and in the standard at the same time, the premium showed up in like 15 days because less people were ordering premiums because they went ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
The standard took 3 months.
Wow. 3 months for you to get a proof copy?
Yeah.
Wow. And I remember that. I remember you saying on the Discord that it was I think you even put a picture up of the premium one, and then you're like, still waiting on the standard, so.
Well, I was like, oh man, because I was trying to get them all to release on like November 1st so people will be able to buy them before Christmas. That was my thought there. And then I did that with the premium. I couldn't do it with the standard. The standard didn't come out first after that. And I mean, it's out now, but
right.
Yeah.
But,
and then there's extra steps because I'm where I have to be approved through them or they have to do an extra like vetting approval thing because I've only produced one item.
Right.
So they're like, this person might be a scam artist or something.
Yeah, because you look like a scammer.
Well, they want to look at it and make sure it's got some level of quality. And
and rightly so. Because I mean, nothing's worse than buying something online and you get it and you're like, that's not what I bought. And you're just pissed. And then that'll just tank you. Because people.
That's why I always order a PDF before I order a full book. I'm like, I need to know that I'm not being done with it, or that it's not going to be a bad idea.
I'm getting bang for my buck. I think I need to go back on drive-through. Hi. My little guy's in here. Well, ask mommy. Sorry. Yeah, we're all on lockdown for COVID because my son's school, his class, it's the 4th time this has happened, and it's just
that's super stressful.
This week I'm working from home because my company decided that, I don't want my boss and the company at large said we're trying to minimize the risk of outbreaks and stuff. So if you can split your offices, and there's the materials coordinator and then there's the warehouse coordinator. I'm the warehouse coordinator, so I handle everything on the outside and he handles everything on the inside, my coworker. And I have 2 guys that work for me that work the forklift and the heavy equipment, and an iron worker that does all the physical labor. And so we can't both be in the shop at the same time. So last week he worked from home, and this week I'm working from home. Just so happens late last night, we got the notice that, positive COVID case. Your son can't come back to school for 7 days and needs a COVID test before he comes back. So we're like, ugh. So yeah, I was going to get some painting done. I had all my paint stuff broken out, and well, best laid plans of mice and men, right? But at least I get to do this with you, so that's awesome. So I have some goofy questions that I like to ask all my interviewees, of which you now officially fall into that category. So my first one that I always like to ask is, you're on an airplane, you've got a book bag, and all of a sudden the airplane is about to crash, and you're going to land on an island, and you can only have one game book with you. Only one. You're going to be there for the rest of your life. There is no options of being rescued. You will die on this island. What's the one game book you bring with you?
I'm going to bring an empty notepad because I'm going to want to spend that time making my own game.
Right.
I'm not even going to pretend to be like I'm going to use somebody else's game for that long. I mean, I'm already elbows deep in making a game that honestly, there's a game I was working on for like 10 years and I didn't know how to make it into a book. And
Now you
then I
do.
did. I stepped away and I made this Trade Winds book. I took a break from the other thing and I was like, I obviously don't know enough about what I'm doing on that. The scope was too big. So I stepped away from that and I started working on the Trade Winds book and I made that a real thing. And now that I'm done with this, I'm like, okay, now I know the meat, the way
Time
to
to go
do it.
back.
I can go
Well,
back. So I'm going back right now, and I'm pretty deep into it,
awesome.
and that's kind of where if I'm going to be on an island, yeah, I'm going to have an empty notepad and a pen that hopefully doesn't run
Oh
out of
nope,
ink.
the pen is separate. You don't get a pen. No.
Oh man, well in that case,
Ah!
I'm
Start
gonna
writing with your own blood.
we'll use some. Well, we'll make a fire, and I'll get some charcoal on the
There you
bottom.
go. No, you can have a pen. For you, Dave, you can have a pen. No, that's you're the first one to come up with that answer. And I've interviewed several very creative people. So,
Weirdly, we're all game designers. I mean, everyone that you're interviewing are people that are making their own.
right. So why wouldn't somebody? It seems logical now that I think about it, but until then, and it's also in the phrasing of the question, right? There's people that think within the box, and there's people that think outside of the box. So obviously, you're an outside of the box kind of guy.
You know that I am. I mean, a notebook is still a book.
Well, I said game book though. I said
Well,
you're on an airplane, you're going down on an island. You can only bring one game book with you. What is it? So the preface is there that it's already published. But no, good answer. Excellent answer.
basic training, we had we were allowed a journal,
Yeah.
but we weren't allowed dice. And so I had a couple of pages that I pulled out of the journal, and I wrote numbers on and shuffled the numbers, and we were playing in the barracks with
Yeah.
just grab the piece of paper that's face down, and it's like that's your number.
I'm lucky enough to say that when I was in Kuwait, they one bookshelf, or it was Barnes and Nobles. Barnes and Noble sent a care package to our unit, and it was all of the starter box sets for D&D and the core books.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty solid. And so we were allowed to obviously have dice and stuff. So yeah, that was I ran a lot of D&D on deployment, let me tell you. But it was fine. It was 3.5 back then. So it was.
Yes. So when my brother was in Iraq, his game master is now my current wife.
Nice, excellent.
He came back, they came back from deployment, and they both got out, and she came over to play games, and that's how we met.
Dude, that is amazing. So your wife is a gamer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
See,
I'm getting some echo back.
that's my brother trying to talk to you. He wants to jump in on this conversation.
Oh, tell him to wait his turn. Damn it. I'm called Mr. Mean for a reason. Don't expect nice. But no, that's awesome. My wife is the antithesis of a gamer wife. I have far too many books, and if I buy another book, I'm going to be castrated. So it's great that I'm old and I don't need it anymore, because by golly, I'm going to buy another book. But she's awesome. She does support my hobby, and she's super cool about it. Like, she went to bed last night at right at 9:30 or something, and I'm in here painting a miniature. And so I didn't even look at the time. I wasn't thinking, I was just caught up in painting. Had a rough day yesterday with a lot of personal stuff that happened. And so I was in a bad mood. I'm like, well, I need to just clear my mind. I need to, find my zen. So I started painting a miniature, and it worked out great, because I went to bed very happy, and I felt a sense of accomplishment and project. It's not done. The miniature's not completed, but it's stepping real close. And so I sent her pictures of the before and after, and all I get back this morning is nice work, because I texted her at like 10:30 at night, not realizing, oh shit, she's asleep. So she texted me back this morning, nice work. So and she does play like the Pathfinder card game with me, the adventure card game, and she'll play board games and some like card games and stuff like that. But to actually sit down and play role-playing games, she doesn't have the patience or the mental acuity to do that. She's very smart. She's a scientist by trade, and yeah, it's just not her cup of tea, which is fine. It's not for everybody. I get it.
Oh man, we have like 200 board games, I would say, as well at our house.
It takes you a night just to figure out what you're gonna play.
Well, so we don't. It's like we would play them, but we have so many of them that we have to relearn the rules every time we sit down to play any of them, and that's a hassle every time. But
yeah,
but, there's still
I'm
always
looking at. I've been talking with some of the blokes in the Discord, and I'm looking at Core Space because it's a role playing game, and in the aspect that there's no script, so to speak. Like a role-playing game, you have some sort of adventure, whether it's in your head or it's written on paper. Core Space is like an open-ended game with 3D terrain and miniatures, and it's pretty easy to set up because it's all cardboard terrain. It takes about 20 minutes to set it up, and I think that the mechanics are relatively simple. So I think it's something my wife would actually enjoy. Because she would get to control some people and make logical decisions that in a role-playing game, we say, okay, you come up to a door, do you try to pick the lock or do you listen? And my wife would be like, well, why do I have to go through that door? I want to go back that way. That's just how my wife thinks. So you're like, but the adventure's in that room, whereas on a 3D terrain, she can see, you know what I mean? So she can make choices.
I oftentimes, the way I run a game, all of that stuff is so open that if one of the players decides to jet off in the other direction, I just roll with it.
Oh yeah, same. I'm pretty easy going, but
I don't even always sit down with a plan at all for where the game's gonna go. I'm just like we're running it, and it's all right off the top of the top of the
I am running the Pathfinder Adventure Path Age of Ashes. For Pathfinder Second Edition.
Of an adventure path because it sounds so much easier, but I think my players I can't imagine my players being able to would be able to do a module, and it's not because they're not capable, but it's really because they are so accustomed to just
gaming styles. Yeah. Well, my group has four players, and two of them have never gamed before. One is my previous IT manager, and the other one is a engineer. And so they've never gamed before. They've read fantasy and sci-fi novels, but they've never played a tabletop role-playing game. Say again. You're cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry. I love new players. They're my favorite.
Yes.
I'm such a fan because they always come to the table with a completely something you don't expect at all. It's just like, holy cow, I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, and it's funny because one of them is pretty much the hack and slasher, right? He just wants to get in. He wants to do it. He wants to be productive. He wants to go. Why are we spending so much time talking? Let's do this. And the other one, the engineer, is like, well, what's the ramifications of this, and what do the rules? He's very much a rules lawyer in a positive way because he keeps me on track. So it's really great, to be honest. And then the other two are one's a father and son team, and the father has been gaming for years, and the son has just gotten into the hobby, but he's not new. He played D&D, and so now he's GMing Pathfinder because of me running it, and the dad is now GMing in a campaign that I get to play in, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm having a lot of fun. But it's not about me, it's about you. So second question. One person from history, past, present, that you could sit down and game with, who would it be? Alive or dead, doesn't matter.
I would pick my dad, I think.
That's a common answer, believe it or not.
He passed before I knew what these, before I ever was really introduced to these kinds of games, and he was such a storyteller. Like I think that he would have been the best game master ever because he could bullshit with the best of anybody I've ever met. Like this is my example, and it's absolutely true. All the way up until I was probably 14 years old, he had me utterly convinced that the world was black and white until they made color cameras. And that time period is, in fact, when cameras started, or when the world became color.
I've used that same joke with my son, so that's hilarious. I totally relate.
100% serious that I just assumed, all the evidence that I could see said that the world was black and white all the way up until this time period, and his story lined up, and I just believed that shit. All of it lined up too much. And now I'm a skeptic. I don't believe shit from anybody says. I don't trust anything from anyone, which is probably a great way to be.
Yeah.
Especially as a game master, my players are always like, I want this, and I'm like, I really can see that this is going to destroy my world, and they don't see it, and I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah,
I see it.
I'm the same way. So that's awesome. And I knew there's a reason I liked you, but yeah, I did the same thing to my son. I told him, because he was like, he came to me, he was in first grade or something like that, and he's like, Daddy, why are these pictures in black and white? And I was like, oh, well, you see. And I went into the whole thing. Before 1958, everybody saw in black and white. We didn't have color. And he's like, yeah. I was like, my granddad couldn't see in color because, and I showed him pictures. And yeah, so same thing. Yeah, I like your dad. Your dad's my kind of guy.
he was he could have sold anybody on anything.
All right. As the old saying goes, I could sell sand to the Saudis.
Yeah, and he would have been an absolutely amazing game master. So if I could go back in time, or however you do that, that's where I would try.
That's
I would
awesome.
Games and be like, and I really think he would have enjoyed them because he played like Nintendo, and he did a bunch of art.
Yeah.
Like he'd play the Zelda game, and then he would draw up all the different monsters in the Zelda game.
So he was young at heart.
And he would draw them up to look like the way he thought they should look.
That's awesome. Very cool.
That was the world I grew up in, was like video games and drawing. And my dad did maps of the video games. Like he would draw out each bush in the different games and what have you, and say, okay, we'll burn here, and he'd make little marks on it for that. And so that was the world I grew up in. So the whole idea, like just taking that and then stepping it right over like 2 degrees into tabletop games, and
that's perfect, man.
I got this.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the final question is that one game that's published. There's a game out there right now. What's the one game that you wish you would have developed? That when you read it or you played it, you were like, oh, I should have done that. That's what's the one game you wish you had a hand in?
I would say it's Mouse Ritter.
Nice. That's a good answer.
It's a small game, and there are some mechanics in it that I even use in LFG when I play LFG. Like when you roll your attributes in that one, you roll 2d6, and then every time you level up, you roll a d20, and your attribute goes up by 1.
Right.
If you roll your current attribute or higher with the d20, that is, your attribute goes up by 1.
Nice.
And so, as a compromise to my players, because I tried to convince them that 2d6 is the way I wanted to run it, and they wouldn't. I have the players roll 3d6, and then I still have them do the roll when they level up thing, because I just freaking love it. I love the idea that like your character gets stronger as they swing their weapon for 20 years. Or
right, which makes total sense, right? We saw it in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movie, right? He was on the Wheel of Woe, and he went on there when he was 10, and when he got off at 19, he was a brick,
Right,
so,
he bulked up, yeah.
Yeah, he bulked up, so, and eating the other people that were on the wheel, but...
I love that we're not limited by our attributes, I think, even in real life.
Right.
Nothing you can't do if you put your mind to it hard enough. I mean, unless you're like you I have nerve damage in my legs, so there are things I can't do now, but I did those things when I was younger, and that's what I can't do now. And
right.
So it goes in both directions, but
right.
But I don't know.
I'm just old, so that's my only excuse. I'm just old.
That's what it comes back to. It's like, yeah, when
I get to be a senior citizen this year. I get my 10 cents off of a McDonald's cup of coffee. I can't wait. It's what I've paid taxes for these last 54 years.
That sounds like it's not worth it. 10 cents off.
I think that was kind of the point. So what's, aside from working on your own game, now that you've got the equipment manual, the Tradewinds underneath your belt, and it's obviously successful and it's doing well, and you've hinted at your own game, are you going to dive into that now?
I have been diving into that. That's what I'm doing all the time when I'm sitting there and I'm BSing on Discord. It's in between bouts of thinking really hard about whatever I'm typing up in my game. Like when I posted the dice calculator thing, that's something I was using. That's something I'm using. I wanted to make sure that my damage numbers balanced well for mitigation purposes because I like a damage mitigation as opposed to like an armor class. That's just how I enjoy
I prefer that as well.
I mean, it's more math, and it's definitely a little bit more. You have to
But we're
think.
gamers. Simple math is, I mean, as long as it ain't algebra, or trigonometry, I think simple math, I think most gamers can contend with quite easily,
I think that you can have algebra and trigonometry in a game, provided you trick the players into not knowing that's what it is.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
And when you put it all into charts and you say just reference this number means this number,
right.
and then the players don't know that you got those numbers.
Yeah. Ha ha!
Actual equations, and I am definitely a mathematician at heart.
Nice. So, do we have a time frame for this game?
Oh man, I didn't have a good time frame for the trade wins. I don't think I'm there yet. I did all of the art and trade wins because I don't know how you can afford artists if you don't do all your own art.
Yeah.
And so,
I know some people like Jay over at Feral Games Inc. He's a big proponent of the channel, and I love his products. He started doing art via DeviantArt. He would reach out, he would look at the art. Now, time is money, as the old saying goes, and how much time do you spend going through all these pages on DeviantArt? But he would go through DeviantArt and look and then say, hey, I'm putting together this role-playing game. I can't afford to pay a whole lot because I don't have money, but I'll give you credit and get your name out there. Are you interested? And I mean, he's got some of his books have some amazing art. And then I know Jay has also used it, and so is Steve from Low Fantasy or Pickpocket have used the Creative Commons art, the royalty-free art. And there's some good art out there.
yeah,
So
there is, but you don't get stuff like like this.
right, that's hard to find, And then how do you, if you go pull an image off the web, now you got to go find that person. You got to get their permission. You know what I mean? So unless you have amazing art skills,
I don't have to worry about any of that stuff because I do all my own arts.
there you go. So the only person you have to pay is yourself.
But it takes a long. The other side to it is
Yeah,
and that's the part of it is like, okay, well, I'm writing all of it up and coming up, attempting to come up with rules. Like my issue isn't coming up with the rule itself. It's trying to figure out a way of wording it that other people can understand the craziness that's in here that I'm trying to get out there.
right. And that's always the hard part. You can have the most amazing rules in the world, but if nobody can interpret it, yeah, that is awesome.
I love this one. I got a lot of experience drawing flames in this
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I just like that it's a knight on a squirrel, or what looks like a squirrel. So I'm down with that, because is it a miniature? Is it a tiny, or is it just a really big squirrel? Who knows?
I have this game. Give me a moment. It's like it's like a bubblegum game. Like all the characters have really big heads.
Oh, a
And
chibi game? Yeah.
It's a board game, and it had these minis that have squirrels, and the squirrels have like armor plating on their tails.
Yes.
And I don't think I really played the game itself terribly often. I mean, it takes a whole day to set the game up. It's just a little
Right.
too much for. I mean, if I'm going to play a game that takes a whole day, I'm going to play D&D
Right.
or its equivalent essentially.
Yeah, you're going to play a role-playing game because, let's face it, the setup there is, at best, you roll out a mat and put out some chips, and good, you're good to go.
Well, and then I'm going to spend that day actually playing. But the
Right.
game itself came with a bunch of plastic minis, and one of them was a squirrel with armor plating on its tail. And I use those minis from time to time. I just throw them into a game, and my players are like, holy crap, there's giant squirrels. And so they absolutely fell in love with them, and now they're a part of my world because I threw them out to be just like clutter creatures, like just stuff in the background and then it became the entire focus of it. It's like, here's this other thing that you're supposed to be paying attention to over here, and I put the
But
wrong
but there's a squirrel with an armor. Are we not going to talk about that? No, we're not.
Like the dogs in Up, they're like squirrel, and they're just that's where they're poking.
Well, that sums up players perfectly right there. So all right, well we're going well over an hour here, so and unfortunately I have to do some real work in this world. So we know you're working on your own game. I'm assuming we're gonna keep us up. I'll put a link to the book Tradewinds for Drive Through RPG. I recommend everybody use my affiliate link because it helps out the channel.
All the links that I've sent out have your affiliate link on.
I noticed that. Thank you so much. It was very kind of you.
That helps you, and it doesn't hurt me, and there's no reason.
It's a win-win. Yeah, it's a win-win, and and Goblin Scribe, he's awesome because anytime I do these interviews, he tweets them out because I abhor Twitter, so I have no patience for it.
Bad at social media that isn't Discord. Like the Discord's just open all the time. I don't have
to think about it. I do MeWe only because I'm anti-Facebook. I can't stand Facebook.
I posted the book on Facebook because I understand that it's good marketing, but at the same time I loathe Facebook.
I'm gonna have to suck it up and create a Mr. Mean Speaks Facebook page, because with the integration and everything and the ability to reach tens of thousands of people, I've been struggling to grow my channel. I mean, it's been since 2007. I have just short of 400 videos on RPG reviews. That's not including my live plays or my streams or my video game streams. That's just tabletop RPG content, and it's interviews and reviews, and I got almost 400 videos up. And I'm barely breaking 1,000 subscribers. I'm like 986 right now.
It might jump in on a subscribe just because I'm on here. So I'll throw it around and see if I can't help out with that. So
it never hurts. Let me put it that way, And like I said, I like to pimp the little guys. I like to, especially when the products are cool. And you and I have been talking about doing this interview for months. So it's just the stars never aligned, and then
the holidays got in the way, as they do.
Well, my in-home gaming campaign, we haven't played in 2 months now. So, and this Friday is supposed to be our first game, but I can't legitimately ask everybody to come over if we've been exposed to COVID. So it would be remiss of me to invite them,
Not yesterday, but the Monday before that was my first game in like 2 months at the house. And then yesterday, 2 of my players couldn't show up because they're sick. So it's like, well, that's the world we're in right
Board
now.
game.
And I on the same side, it's like, well, COVID's horrible, but at the same time, people are more accepting to the idea of saying, hey, I've got the sniffles, I'm not showing up to work or whatever. And I think that as a society is a better thing.
Yes, I do too, because I don't want to get sick because you just want to game or you want to go to work today.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be COVID for me not to want to get sick.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and
would be a runny nose, and I'm like, I really don't want a runny nose.
And I'm, like I said, I'll be 55 this summer, and I'm not as spry and stuff as I used to be. I mean, for a guy my age and my size, I'm in pretty decent shape, and I don't get sick very often. I do have seasonal allergies, but I'm learning how to cope. I never had allergies till I moved to Minnesota, but I'm learning how to deal with them now. I'm learning the joy that is Claritin.
I have some nose spray stuff that I use for allergies because I'm allergic to mold, and everything is molding in the Pacific Northwest because it rains 100% of the time.
Exactly. No, you don't count how many days of rain you have. You count how many days of sunshine you had.
Oh yeah, I mean that's.
I know. I used to be up there. I know that area quite well, so I totally understand with you. Dave, as always, amazing to chat with you. Dave is very active on the Discords. So if you're not on the Mr. Mean Speaks Let's Talk About Tabletop RPG Discord, please find a link below. And if you like Dave's Tradewinds, pop in and say hi to Dave and aka Wiki Snapper, and let him know that you've got the book and it's awesome. If you buy it on drive-thru, put a note on there that says, hey, when you do your review or you just make a comment, let him know that Mr. Mean sent you. It means a lot to me, and I think it means a little bit to Dave as well, because he's very prolific in our community, and I appreciate that. Obviously, you're a staunch supporter of the channel, and that is awesome. And you make cool shit, dude, so I can't wait to see more of your stuff.
I'm working on it.
All right. Make sure in the chat here with me that you put whatever your social media links. I know you're on my Discord, but I think you said you have your own Discord link. So
my Discord link, or my Discord, is mostly just people that I bounce ideas off of.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
so it's probably
like
social play.
You're big on my Discord, so that's everybody can get a hold of you there, of course. And if you're a budding artist, maybe send some art Dave's way. Maybe I'll look at it, and if it's something you guys can work out, that's on you guys. But I'll throw it out there. I know it's worked for Jay a couple of times over at Fro Games Inc. So other than that, I don't have anything else to say. To you? Well, we're sad your brother didn't get a chance to get on the channel, but maybe we'll do a separate interview with him just to pick on him. Is he the big brother or the little brother?
He's the big brother.
Oh, well, we definitely got to pick on him, because Lord knows he's given you a ton of shit throughout the years.
Well, none of it hasn't been deserved, I'm sure.
Oh, well, hey, I glued my little brother's hands to the wall, so I'm sure he's not as bad as me as a big brother.
We used to get on each other a lot, whereas let's just say we mellowed a lot. That's a nice way of wording that. I don't want to throw him under the bus or anything.
No, well, he's the big brother, so you gotta look up to him in certain ways, and that's awesome that you guys are close. All right, Dave. So as always, a pleasure to talk with you. Everybody out there in Discord and YouTube land, thank you so much for watching. As always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. To steal from Dave 2D, and as the Matt Colville says, all the info will be down in the doohickey down below. And Dave, we'll see you on Discord, buddy. And as always, peace and hair grease. And remember, Mr. Mean says to be nice.